question marks around a memory cycle and how much of their margin growth is really sustainable. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's, I think, two elements that we need to focus on. And one is what I will refer to as the trade. And then the other is the one that I'll refer to as the strategic objective, or what I think you led in with the so-called China Shock 3.0. And right now we have to get through the next, I don't know, call it 2 to 3 weeks as the book goes out. There's going to be massive oversubscription. What is it, $8 billion that they're trying to raise? It'll probably be 100 times oversubscribed. There'll be a pop on the initial day of trading. But then over time, I suspect stainer minds, as we shall say, will begin to play out and the valuation will come down. But the CXMT company, which really only began commercial operations back in 2020, is about China driving for resiliency and autonomy in the overall AI stack. As you pointed out correctly, it is the distant number four DRAM producer in the world. But I think variable that really needs to be highlighted here is China and all of the various Chinese devices and IT companies. They consume 20% of the world's DRAM market. So, you're talking about, I think, the earnings of what CXMT and the impact that we have to wait and see. But theoretically, you're talking about Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, over time losing market share because CXMT is going to sell to their local groups here. And that's where I think the whole China Shock 3.0 comes in, which is now we're going to begin to see Chinese technological companies begin to expand and begin to permeate and grab market share from those groups that are now sort of leading the tech stack, if you will, globally.
Yeah, and some could argue that, look, a TSMC doesn't have high bandwidth memory chips, but maybe it doesn't have to get so aggressive on that front, because when it comes to the legacy conventional memory DRAM story or NAND flash story, I mean, Samsung and SK Hynix have been talking about fierce competition coming from the Chinese players. And so, just going back to the HBM angle, Peter, how ambitious do you think CXMT will turn out to be when it comes to HBM business?
Well, what we're watching is the exact same movie we've seen time and time again. And my outlook is that the ending of that movie is going to be exactly the same. And this goes to your point about, let's just call it innovation and or a Chinese company being able to move up the value chain. And that's where we're talking about the high bandwidth chips. And right now, what you're finding is most outside observers are making that point, which is, well, yes, this could be a competition for lower value DRAM, but the real innovation, the real technology resides with the big three, as they're called. For right now, that's absolutely true. But again, whether it's in anything from automotives to steel to specialty chemicals, China always begins its aggressive moves in a given sector at the low end, where they're able to sort of build a market position. And then what happens is you wake up 5 years or 10 years later, and that Chinese company or the entire Chinese sector has completely eaten all of their competitors globally. I suspect that is exactly what we're seeing transpire at this very moment, or at least the beginning stages.
And I guess that's the reality sort of surrounding these export restrictions as well. It is slowing down Chinese players. And what are your thoughts around really the damage done so far and really the pressure that keeps building on the Chinese tech companies like a CXMT?
Well, the first thing that I would point out is, look, contrary to what some people might think, I actually applaud the American policy initiative to put certain restrictions on technologies that China is seeking. Going all the way back to 2018, during the first Trump administration and the first trade war with China, it became aware to Beijing that this was an attack vector, that there was a dependency on U.S. technology that needed to be mitigated. So China has been, for the better part of a decade, already moving as aggressively as possible in that direction. Providing, NVIDIA chips or ASML manufacturing lithography would only accelerate that process. But quite frankly, the die, as they say, has already been cast. There's an old joke here in China that says if you highlight a problem to the Chinese, well, they're going to solve it. It's just a matter of time. And again, I think that's what we're seeing, not just with the low-end DRAM, but across the entire tech stack. So it's moving forward at this stage.